This is Square Deal Video 2, and we're going to get into some detail here on the protection, regulation, and conservation policies of the Square Deal. So the Square Deal has three main foci: the conservation of nature, consumer and worker protection, and the regulation of predatory business and labor practices. So what did the Square Deal do specifically in business regulation? Again, its goal is to break up these monopolistic tendencies of the trusts and the monopolistic tendencies of labor unions. And to do that, it passed three bills in the early 1900s, the Expediting Act, the Elkins Act, and the Hepburn Act, among others. The Expediting Act was literally to expedite this legislation, put it on the front burner, because the legal shenanigans of the businesses who had the best lawyers, they just kept getting these trials postponed whenever somebody tried to fix this. So they actually passed legislation to move these kinds of cases to the front of the line. And then the Elkins Act and the Hepburn Act are very similar. They particularly go after railroads. And one of the ways that these trusts, the oil trusts, Standard Oil and the steel maker trusts, one of the ways that they kept everybody in line, and if you didn't play ball and do what they said, if you were trying to get in the oil business and you weren't playing by Standard Oil's rules, well, they would work with the railroads to cut you out of your ability to transport your product to market, or whatever you were making, steel or whatever. So the railroads were sort of the particular means of crushing anybody who tried to enter a business where there was a trust and to undercut the trust on price. See, if you're making monopolistic profits, then those are extra high profits. And so it would make sense for somebody to enter that business and undercut you on price, because the prices are so high, there's room to still make a nice profit and lower the price a bit. Well, of course, the businesses, the trusts that were already involved didn't want the prices of their products to come down, and would then work with the railroads to make sure that this new competitor had no access to the market. So the competitor would die out. And the Elkins and Hepburn Acts regulate the railroads to make sure that that can't happen anymore. Just make sure, again, you know what these trusts are and what unions are. So trusts are business partnerships that form monopolies in order to keep competition out and thus keep the prices of their goods and services extra high, so they make extra high profits. Unions are groups of laborers who band together and use their collective power, often hinging on their ability to strike and stop production, to bargain as a group for higher wages and more benefits and safer working conditions, etc. Unions are sort of called into existence in many ways by monopolistic business practices and predatory business practices, so they threaten to shut down unless the people who own the businesses capitulate, and obviously that could be abused as well, that power. But you see, if it's just one person trying to bargain for a raise, like I'm not going to work, I'm not going to make steel today, what does the business owner care if he's got 1,000 employees and one of them says, I'm not going to work today unless you raise my wages? He'll just say you're fired and bring somebody in from outside. But if all 1,000 of them withhold their labor on the same day, now that's a huge problem for the business owner. So again, this is the tension that Teddy Roosevelt as a leader had to figure out and navigate. So these are some of the major players in the trust busting. This first guy here is J.P. Morgan of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Pierpont Morgan. He was a fierce hater of Theodore Roosevelt. He was a leader of the finance trusts, and he thought that the business owners really understood the world, and politicians need to stay out, and it was a lot of tension between those two guys. And then, here's just three more random major players. Andrew Carnegie, who was the richest man in America for a while, and is on the left, and the upper right is Cornelius Vanderbilt, and the guy at the bottom is John Rockefeller. So that's Carnegie was steel, and Vanderbilt was shipping and railroads, and Rockefeller was Standard Oil. And these guys were making a lot of money by doing what is today illegal, and by fiddling with the deck, as Teddy Roosevelt would have said, and thus he was not on the happy side with these guys. On the public safety side, there are three major pieces of legislation passed in the early 1900s as part of the Square Deal: the Pure Food and Drug Act, the Meat Inspection Act, and the Federal Employers Liability Act. And they all roughly sound like what they are. So the Pure Food and Drug Act actually made businesses label what was in their products and sort of take a lot more responsibility for the specificity of those, and gave a lot more power to people who got sick from eating tainted food and drugs to get justice. The Meat Inspection Act, he worked so hard on that because the meat at the time was just foul and disgusting. And the whole process was just so unsanitary and unhealthy, and he had a study done of that, sort of an expose. And when the meat people pushed back against this legislation, he said he would take it to the newspaper and have it published with photographs of what they found, and the meat packers backed away and acceded to the issues. And then the Federal Employers Liability Act makes it much more easy for workers to get compensation and when they're hurt on the job from their employer, and make sure the employers had safe workspaces and work floors, and did something about it if people got hurt. And here's two photos just to give you a sense of how bad it was. I mean, again, in 1900, before this legislation, just the pollution was really wreaking havoc on the neighborhoods around factories. And here's a picture of the meat packing and what that looked like, and just how disgusting it was before the changes were made. And just to give you a sense of some of the issues going on there specifically, there was a big coal strike in 1902 where the coal miners, are notoriously underpaid and incredibly dangerous work. They wanted a 10% raise and better, healthier working conditions, and the coal miners were saying, coal mining companies were saying, no, this isn't up to you, and your unions are communist, and you guys should be lucky, feel lucky you have jobs. And just to quote this one guy to give you a sense of what was going on, one of the coal mine owners said, "The rights and interests of the laboring man will be protected and cared for not by the labor agitators, but by the Christian men to whom God, in his infinite wisdom, has given the control of the property interests of the country." So as we move forward here, to get back to the issue of tramping the perpetual journey, Remember the king said, wow, we've been put in here as kings by God, and so you guys are here for us, and everybody revolves around the king and the royalty, and because they're a stand-in for God on earth. And of course, the United States was founded saying, actually, no, right? That's not the way it is, and that's not the way government should be. And you had here's this case of the coal miner, where you have these what are called oligarchs or plutocrats, these incredibly wealthy men, small groups of wealthy men who control such a huge portion of the business world. And, they were in many ways saying, we have been put here by God. Why would we have all this wealth and power if God didn't want us to? And obviously we have a wisdom that God must have appreciated. Otherwise we wouldn't be running these businesses. And who are you, peons, to question us? Like, you're there in a sense for us, right? And what an un-American thought that was, and it drove Teddy Roosevelt crazy. One of Teddy Roosevelt's goals, along with John Muir and a lot of other people at that time, was to conserve the natural wonders of the country for everybody's good, so they couldn't just be purchased by a handful of wealthy people, as has happened in virtually every other country, Europe in particular. So during his time in office, he created the U.S. Forest Service. He established 51 federal bird reservations, 4 national game preserves, 150 national forests, 5 national parks, enabled the American Antiquities Act, which allowed him and subsequent presidents to name national monuments. Roosevelt did 18, and there have been many, many more since. During his time in office, he protected 230 million acres of land as public land, so that everybody could enjoy it and use it. And there's not a McDonald's in Yosemite. Roosevelt, like so many strong leaders, really, really, truly good leaders, feels incredible gratitude. And he feels that we have an amazing heritage in America, both a political heritage of the founding and the Constitution, and on the other hand, the amazing physical grandeur of the country. And so he's really asking everybody to respect that, and to say, like, we didn't make this country, we didn't make Yosemite, we didn't make the Grand Canyon, we didn't make the flocks of geese and the herds of elk, and we didn't make the Constitution. We just lucked into all that, and so that's just a huge gift to us, and we have to be proper stewards of it. So takeaways for video 2. Name 3 essential parts of the Square Deal legislation. Define trusts and unions. Name 3 people in particular who led trusts and were against the Square Deal legislation. Name 2 acts passed in the Square Deal to protect public safety. Name 3 federal programs or agencies that the Square Deal brought about to conserve public spaces and nature. You should be able to explain in your own words why many people, especially major business owners, found the Square Deal to inappropriately expand the role of government. And then also explain why Theodore Roosevelt thought that American citizens of 1900 should respond with grateful responsibility to preserve their land and system of government.